So I want to walk you through a customer journey map that I created for customer success. Now, this journey map was designed to be flexible based on whichever segment of the market is being used for, either the small to medium-sized businesses, right, the mid-markets, or the enterprise. It can be it can be designed to align with whichever segment it is. And also, one thing about this customer journey map as well is the fact that it is made to be a predictable playbook that makes customer success to be strategic, right? It is best used when you're trying to build a playbook that you know that if you can do these specific actions, you can guarantee these outcomes, right? Or you already have some successful customers down and you want to build a playbook based on that. That is what this customer journey map was designed, right? So now there are two parts to this customer journey map. There is the stages by which the customer walks through all the way from when they first get handed off from sales to the last stage of advocacy, when they become an advocate. And now there, for each stage, there are 6 frameworks that the customer will go through to ensure that they successfully move from one stage to another stage, right? To maximize retention all the way to the last stage. So now let me dive into it. So let's start with the first stage, which is the kickoff stage, right? Now the kickoff stage is the very first stage. Then we move to the implementation stage, right? Then the next stage is the first value. After that, the fourth stage is the adoption stage. The fifth stage is the retention. The sixth stage is expansion. And the seventh stage is advocacy. Now, for each stages, remember I said there are frameworks that ensure that the customer moves from one stage to another. Now, as you can see over here, right, these are these 6 frameworks. And I'm going to explain them. That is the outside-in approach, the key milestones, partnership, sharing with the customer. I'm sorry about my name. I'm not really good with naming things, but you will get why I name them like that. The measure and also the optimize. So those are the 6 things that the customer, these are like the checklist that the customer must go through for them to move from one stage to another. So let me get right into it. Let's use a kickoff. Let's start with kickoff. Now, when we are starting with kickoff, this is when the customer gets handed over from sales, right? And to the customer success team. So for the kick now, the very first framework that I'm talking about here is the outside-in approach. Now, the outside-in approach is before I go into the framework, before I go into the stages, sorry, let me explain the frameworks. Now, the outside-in approach, right, is basically seeing things from the perspective of the customer, right? This is not about you; it's about the customer. What are they thinking, right? At the very first, what are they thinking when they are with you? For example, when it comes to kickoff, when it gets handed over from sales to kickoff, the customer is probably thinking, okay, please, I do not want to be repeating myself to the customer success team. What if they already said? I expect you guys to have a smooth internal system, right? So everything is aligned, right? And that is okay. The kickoff, my colleagues have to be on it, right? My relevant people in my company have to also agree that this purchase was the best decision. These are things that the customer is thinking about, right? Now, the next thing is the key milestones. The key milestones are the things that the customer, right, have to do for them to successfully pass through a stage. The key milestones are based on the objection or the outside-in approach. For example, when a customer is thinking that things need to, I don't want to be repeating myself to the sales team, all I've already said to the customer success team, everything I've already said to the sales team. They know that one of the key milestones is going to have to undo that objection, and that is basically designing, a smooth transition from framework from sales to CS in the company. That is going to be a key milestone. Another thing, for example, is my colleagues need to be on it. Now, for my colleagues, that means we have an objection that my colleagues needs to be on it. So a key milestone that you have to check to ensure that objection has been handled is stakeholder alignment. That is ensuring that all the stakeholders, right, the relevant stakeholders are in on it, right? Maybe inviting them onto the kickoff call and ensuring that you listen to everybody's goals and objectives, right? Now, the next thing is the ownership. After the key milestones after you already know the things that the customer has to do to successfully pass through a stage, now you have to assign ownership, because ownership is how things are going to get done, how we are going to move fast. And you can use the RACI model, the responsible, the accountable, the consulted, and the informed. So the ownership is how you're going to assign roles and responsibilities to ensure that everything moves smoothly. Now, the next stage is the sharing with the customers. Now, basically, these are the things that you need to share with the customers in this stage to ensure that there is transparency, there is alignment, right? Everybody knows what to do. For example, one of the things you could share, right, in the kickoff stage is the follow-up summaries. After the call, you can set a summary of the things that are important to relative stakeholders to ensure that there is alignment, right, and handle any quick questions, right. Another thing also you could share in the kickoff stage is a success plan. Okay, your problems have been identified. This is how we plan to tackle it, right? That's another thing you share. So and now let's move to the next thing. Next is measure. Now, measurement is basically the metrics that you're going to be tracking based on the key milestones. Now, you see that these stages are kind of building on each other. Let me explain the measure, for example. Remember, I said one of the things in the key milestones is that stakeholder alignment. Now, for the measure, I see that one of the things we have here is stakeholder attendance rate. Now, we know that our stakeholders need to be aligned. What do we need to do to make them aligned, right? And how do we measure that? Maybe that is ensuring that they all show up to the kickoff call, right? For example, you can now define a metric, the key stakeholder attendance rate. So let's say 7 relevant stakeholders, right, are supposed to show up to the call, right? But 5 show up. You can log that into your CRM. You can use Excel, whatever it is, right? Now you know that why the only 5 show up instead of 7? That is, that allows you to know that to ensure that that everything is going on smoothly. So that's basically what the measure does, right? Now, for the last framework is the optimize. Now, optimize is basically what you have to do better, right? To ensure that things become better for each customer. Let's say, for example, the stakeholder did not show up. Only 5 stakeholders showed up after instead of 7. Your optimize is what can you do next time? Maybe the 2 stakeholders, maybe they didn't receive timely information about it, or maybe they were not briefed enough, right? Now you can know that, okay, next time for another customer, you have to ensure this. Now, what these frameworks does is that they allow you to create benchmarks for the next customer. For example, if you know that, okay, when one customer came in and went through, this was all the things they did for this particular stage. Let's say from the time to kick off, it took them 5 days, right? The stakeholder alignment, right? Maybe you did certain things to get the stakeholders to be aligned, right? You can log that. For the ownership, you know that, okay, this is who needs to be this is who needs to be responsible for this. This is who needs to be responsible for that. You can know that, okay, when the next customer comes, you can also repeat the same, right? And you can guarantee an outcome. Then also, okay, key stakeholder attendance rate. You can know that, okay, for the last customer, the entire 7 customers didn't show, but 6 showed, and they were still successful. So that means for the next customer, if we can get at least 6 onto the call, they will be successful, right? So and now for the optimize, then you know that, okay, the optimize is basically what you know, where you will log in, what you are going to do for the next customer. So that's I hope you can get the idea of what I'm trying to do here, right? Now that's for kickoff. Now let's look at for implementation. That's now once the customer has already done all those things successfully, right? Once you know they've passed through this, okay, you know that these are the certain key milestones they have to meet. You can log it in your, for example, I use an Excel sheet. Okay, the success plan has been validated. Check, right? Ensure that it has actually been validated it has been approved. Stakeholder alignment, has it been validated? Has it been done? Right? Check. You can even use mathematical functions for some of them, right? For example, you can use for the key stakeholder alignment for key stakeholder attendance rate, for example, you can do something like, let's say only five stakeholders showed up instead of 7. You can do 5/7, right? 5 stakeholders over 7 stakeholders times 100. That will give you the percentage rate. You can even log that in, right? You can use it to create an health score by adding, let's say, okay, you can create weighted scores. Let's say it's key stakeholder alignment, you give it 20. You give a success plan sign off, you give it another 20. This is how you can log it in to actually create a customer health score that is actually giving you real insights to what is happening with the customer to ensure that they move from one stage to another. So, like I said, let's move to the implementation stage. Now, the implementation stage, after you are done with the kickoff, the implementation is where we are going to set things off, right? This is where you know that, okay, they have agreed, we've identified the goal. Now we have to set up our systems in a way that align with their goals so that they can be successful. For example, so now, like I said, the outside in approach is, first of all, what is the customer thinking now that we are in the implementation? The customer is very thinking, well, now that we know it has to be fast and easy. Please, I don't want to be stressed, right? I don't want to be stressed. Another thing is, please, my team should not be overwhelmed, right? If you are going to be, let's say it's an enterprise software that requires, an infrastructure, a complex infrastructure, and it's all technical. My team must not be stressed. Please, you guys should have known what you're good to do, right? And get it. So you have to know that, okay, this is what the customer is thinking. That means your key milestones has to address these things, right? Another thing is, okay, it should integrate nicely with my existing tool stacks, right? If I'm buying one thing, I expect it that, okay, you should communicate with other tool stacks I'm already using. Now, for example, you can get some of this information from the sales and the marketing team. You don't even have to rack your brain, right? Because the sales and marketing, they already have an ICP. They know what the ICP, the challenges and all, right? The objections they got. You can work with from some of that, right? And also, as you are building on this, communicating more and more with more customers, you'll be able to log more and more actual, the actual things that the customer are thinking about. Now, let's move to the key milestones. Remember, we said something like, okay, it should be easy and set up. It should be easy and fast. Now, and see, fast and easy implementation against the benchmark. Okay, against the benchmark is based on the fact that, let's assume you already have a existing customer, right? You can know that, okay, our successful customer, it takes an average of let's say 1 hour for them to set up this thing. That means this customer everything must set up within 1 hour. If it starts to lapse above 1 hour, something is wrong. That is a risk and you have to address it, right? You can see how it starts to give you insights. Then another thing is, okay, for example, the infrastructure or their use case makes their goal possible, right? Remember, the customer wants to succeed, right? Now, you should know that you can, okay, so now, okay, the customer wants to succeed, right? We've already decided on this goal, right? This is where you actually have to be proactive as a customer success manager. Now, let's say let's work with a tool, for example. Let's say a customer support tool that helps customer support agents to handle calls, right? Let's say, like instead of when they handle 50 calls before, now this tool can handle 70 calls, right, without overwhelming the human support agents. Now you can know that. Let's say now on the when you were talking about their goals and their success plan, they said they want to be handling 70 calls. But now the infrastructure, you kind of found out that, well, maybe they have some outdated stuff that might actually make this possible. That it's not actually from your own end, right? Now you know that is an issue. That is one thing. Now, like I'm saying, the fact that you have to know this, that you already know that the fact that their infrastructure has to support their goal is going to be information you've already gotten based from the fact that you've seen how it worked for other successful customers. Can you already see how this is making you proactive? So this is something you probably got. Maybe there was a time the customer came in and you thought everything was going well, and you found out that, oh shit, something about the infrastructure is not going to allow their goal to be possible. And now it's making you look like you overpromised and you are under delivering. So you can learn from that. You can use that to optimize, for the next customer. You'll be starting to see what I'm trying to say here. So now let's move to the next thing. Now, ownership. Okay, the CSM, right? The FD, the FDEs or the solution engineers, the IT team, the end users, who are people that are going to be involved in this stage, right? So ensure that there is success. Then the sharing with the customer. What do I have to share with the customer in this stage? Ensure that everything goes well, right? Maybe manual resources, right? Checklists and timelines, escalation paths, go live readiness, right? You already have the idea of the things. You can start building on it, right? As you work with more and more customers. Yeah, as you can see, the measure. For example, I will talk about this, like it should be easy and fast, right? The setup should be easy and fast. Now we can track something like implementation time. Wait, I'm sorry about my naming, but basically implementation time, it means, okay, let's say your tool requires 4 stages of implementation. Stage 1 should take like 30 minutes. Stage 2 should take like uh, 10 minutes, whatever. Now you can know that, okay, Stage 2 should take 10 minutes. That means it should not lapse for the customer. If it lapse, that's probably a risk. It might not be a big risk, but it's still something. It allows you to be proactive to ensure that, because when you know that, okay, if it stays within that 10 minutes, you can ensure that, okay, that is some sign that this customer will be successful, right? This is just a checklist. Like, they don't even need to pass 100%, but you know that, okay, if they pass 80% of it, they are good to go. This is a customer that can become an advocate, that can increase their lifetime value, right? So this is basically the whole idea of this framework. I also see things like the user acceptance testing, right? Pass rates, the user acceptance testing cycle. And this gives you idea of, is the customer, are they trained enough, right? Can they work with the complex tool? Do you need to do trainings? These even give you ideas. For example, training completion rates, right? Let's say you have to train the customers, but out of the 8 customers that you are out of the 8 end users you're supposed to train, only 5 completed, right? It can make you look inwards into your internal system that, okay, maybe you need to revamp your your training method or whatever, right? So it allows you to keep on refining and getting better for the next customer, so that the time it will take a customer to be successful will be getting shorter and shorter and shorter, faster and faster and better, right? So as you can see, optimize. Let me increase this, right? Now that you already once the customer, right? This is okay. The things you learn, for example, let's say you found out that the let me say wrong customer retrievals after go live. Let's say there was an issue, right? You can say, okay, for this customer, unless that I have to be running channel and customer retrievals, after they go live, so that for the next customer, this, it has worked for this customer, it probably work for the next customer. So now let's move to the next stage. That is the first value, right? This is the very first value that the customer will get. Now, as you can see, we are starting with the outside-in approach again. What's the customer thinking? The customer is thinking, well, for me to get the first value, my effort should be minimal. Like, I should realize this thing immediately. I should not have to drop through oops for me to understand why, to start seeing the ROI on my investment, right? Also, the outcome has to be related to my goal, right? Has to be something that wow me. Like, don't tell me I've seen value when I've not actually seen value, right? You can start to see, how you start to design things based from how the customer is thinking, not how we are thinking internally, but how they are thinking, because that's the whole point of customer success. It has to be for the customer. So now let's go. Now we say, okay, now that we know that these are what the customer is thinking about, we can now start to create milestones that tackle these objections. For example, you can see that it should be amazed, right? They must be amazed. First value is not just about saying value. You also have to be amazed. For example, let's say you sell the productivity software. Now, this productivity software, let's say it helps you to do something like a to-do list, right? Whereby you can plug in it's an AI product, whereby you can plug in your to-do list and you're able to rank it based on what you should do first, do last, so that it can be very productive. Now, if a customer signs up to your platform for the first time, once they see that to-do list, that is value. That's first value. But is it a complete first value? No. Because yes, they've seen something that other tools are not doing, or that you're probably doing better than other tools. But the real value comes when they actually implement what the to-do list give them and they see results. You'll be like, wow, this shit actually works, doesn't it? That is first value. That's first value. So they have to be amazed. If they are not amazed, it is incomplete. So you already know that. And you can get this from, like I said, you can get this from, other customers. Let's say after they got the first value, you spoke to them, right, through surveys or whatever. And they were like, man, it was insane. I started to, like, I was on the call and the AI agent was, just handling everything as, like, from their sending, you know that, oh, this is something that the customer has to experience for them to successfully pass through the stage. I started to say, like, what I'm trying to build here. And also, like I said, the ownership, who needs to own this stage for everything to be successful? As you can see, the product analytics, because of course you have to be saying things like the usage rates and all like that. Then also now for the sharing with the customers, like I said, these are the things you will share with the customer at each stage to ensure that everything goes on smoothly. For example, there's one thing I also want to mention. The metrics will also be, they are also going to be leading metrics and lagging metrics, right? So metrics will be leading because these are the metrics that tell you that if you do this, you will get that. And the lagging is what you get after you do what? As in one thing. So this is what this customer journey map allows you to be. Like, you're going to create metrics in such a way that you're able to be very predictable and strategic. Okay, for example, let me continue. You said sharing with the customers for this stage, right? As you can see, this is the measurement. So you can see the time to first value. We got that. The grow critical feature adoption rate. For example, now you remember I mentioned something about leading and lagging indicator. Now remember that they said they want to let's go back to the AI tool we talked about. They said they are handling 20 calls, 50 calls, they want to handle 70. You know that there are some certain features in your product that will allow this to be possible, assuming the infrastructure supports it, right? You see how it's tying into each other. Assuming the infrastructure supports it. Now, let's say there are certain features. Now, the customer is, now remember one thing also. I said in the sharing with the customer, the product analytics. Can you now see where the product analytics team comes in, right? Then you see that the product analytics, right? They are not adopting a certain feature that is critical, that has worked for other customers, and they must use. You can see that they are not adopting it, right? So now you know that that's the leading indicator that if you don't adopt this, they won't get an outcome. So you can go in to address that before it becomes a problem. So you can start to see how these metrics are addressing the key milestones, right? For example, was reached. Example, let me show you one. All users complete their first real task and workflows was fast and easy. If they are adopting the core feature that they need to adopt, you know that it is going to be fast and easy for them, and you can check that off your checklist, right? So I said, so that's basically that's basically the measurement for this stage. Then also we have the optimization. Like I said, these are the things that you learned, right? The mistakes you made and how to correct them for this stage. For example, you can say maybe you have to interview customers who reached value quickly to extract the best practices so that you can use it for the next customer, right? So now let's move to the next stage. That is adoption. After they've seen the first value, they've already seen that, okay, I understand what this tool is doing for me. It's now time to ensure that they actually include it into their work day-to-day activities. So, like I said, we start again with the outside-in approach. What is the customer thinking in this stage? They are thinking, oh, I still have to understand, how this connects to my product. Okay, I got the first value, but now I need to see how I can spread it across my workflow. They need to understand that. Also, it needs to be, it needs to become part of my day. I need to see this tool as something I can be using daily, not one time or regularly, depending on whatever tool it is, right? It also needs to collaborate with my other tool stacks. Maybe they have other things there, they have different things they have to connect to integrate with one another to make their workflow smooth. So basically, these are the things that the customer are thinking as they get to a new stage. So now, know that, okay, those are the things that they are thinking. Now, what are the key milestones? What do you need to address, right, for them to successfully pass through this stage? You can see, for example, one of it is embedded in the unnecessary workflow. So that means you have to make sure it is embedded. If it is not embedded in their workflow, they are not passing through this stage. You have to ensure that happens, right? You also have to ensure that champions and power users are exploring additional use cases, right? Then that means with their exploring additional use cases, that means they're starting to see the usefulness of the product across different parts of their workflows. They're starting to see. So that is, they have to see that. If they don't see that, something is wrong. This customer needs to be addressed, right? So this is how you become proactive. Like, so let's now ownership. Who needs to own this stage, right? Champions, end users, the customer success manager, the stakeholders, technical team, whoever needs to be assigned, right? Using the RISI model, you dot them in here. Then now, what do you need to share with the customers, right? Right? What do you need to share with them? Maybe tips, workshops to deepen engagement, right? The weekly to monthly usage trends. And so, sorry, I'm adjusting so that this will be more visible. Then also, new use cases for industry peers, access to community if available, right? So these are, some things And remember I said this can be done based on your segment market, right? Whatever works for you is what you log in here. You don't have to use what I'm using here. This is just an example to give an idea of what I'm trying to build here, right? Now for the measurement, right? We see things like the feature intensity index, right? How much are they using the feature across breadth, right? Breadth, that means different tool stacks and different features in it. Then depth, how when they see a feature, how deep are they using it? Then also length, what is the duration? Are they using it daily, weekly, monthly? You start to weigh these things against benchmarks if you have them. Okay, they need to be using this software at least 3 days out of 5 days for them to be successful. That's what we've seen works for their customers, right? You start to build real practicable benchmarks out of this, practical benchmarks out of this. Then also you can see things like the feedback actionability score. Okay, an idea of the feedback actionability score is basically now when they are giving you feedback, let's say, okay, let me start with one. The feedback participation rate. Let's say, you reach out to a champion or a user, a power user. We enjoy the fact that we know we like the fact that enjoy our tool. We like to make it become better. Can you, participate in this survey to let us know one or two things you think about it and you suggest that we do, right? Now, first of all, you need to log how many of them are willing, because now you need to be. This is where you need to be creating champions and power users that will help you for in the time of renewal, right? So okay, how many are participating, and also apart from the fact that they are participating, the feedback they are giving, how useful is it? Because they are giving very useful feedback. They're interested in seeing progress with your tool. They're interested in advancing with it. So you start to track all these things, right? Then also, then we move to your optimize, right? The things you learned, the things you did do well that you can do better. You log them in so that you can become better for the next customer. Let's move to the next stage. This is the retention. Now, this is like the longest stage in the customer journey, right? That this is where you show the customers renews, right? They continue to see recurring value. When the customer gets to this stage, they start to think different things that, okay, software should still, should be deeply integrated with my with my workflow so much that it becomes an hassle to let it go, right? That the customer is thinking, they are not actually, it just doesn't have to actually be the real thought. You don't have to word it exactly the real thought, but you just have to capture what they need to be thinking for them to be able to, for you to be able to address all the things to ensure that they are successful in this stage. And that is, my infrastructure and my system has to be ready to scale with it. Like, okay, if you're asking me to renew, right? If you actually we already have new users on board. We already have new employees at the company, right? All like that. Do I need to overhaul my system again, or is it a very easy process? They are thinking about all these things. So now you already know that, okay, they are thinking about all these things. What do you need to do there? Okay, you need to ensure that integration is expanding deeper. You need to ensure that, okay, look at this one, for example, it's custom made to your infrastructure, right? Remember we talked about the fact that the infrastructure has to be ready to to scale with it. So now you know that, okay, it needs to be custom made. This is one of the key milestones that needs to happen in this stage. You have to check it off your list. Like I said, you can make the metrics, you can be measured either with mathematically or checklist or just simple things that just help you to ensure that you are being strategic and proactive, right? And that thing is that you ensure that the renewal process is teed up. Because if you are going to go for a renewal, you have to start very early, right? Because you don't want to be okay, let me show you. For example, now the customer is thinking my purchase process has to be followed and friction should be minimized. If you are going to tell me to renew, and don't come and be telling me when it's just like 1 or 2 days, and now you have to, and I have to go through different paperworks, right? That can introduce a lot of friction. So you know that, okay, you need to address that by starting the renewal process very early, ensure that everybody's on board. Then also, multi-trade, basically, sure that all the people that you need to create a relationship with, you are creating a relationship with them. So as usual, who needs to run this stage for this stage to be successful, right? The finance team, the CSM, the sales and renewal manager, however it is done at your organization, basically, right? Then also what needs to be shared with the customer at this stage, right? This can be done based on what you've already seen worked for other customers, or you can just, try different things. If this is the first time, you are working with it, you don't yet have enough data, right? So you can do things like, a preview of the roadmaps. If you're going to ask them to renew, You need to show them, okay, where are we going? Then, okay, where are we going from here? How are you going to get us to our goal? Why should I renew? Like, I have to see the ROI on continuing with you guys. Are you starting to see? So you have to be addressing all these things. As you can see, personally, I think for like enterprise software, you have to start renewal for like, you have to start your renewal process like when 120 days ahead. That's 4 months, right? It allows you to, this is the way to make everything, to release pressure, right? So that you won't be pressured when it's like 30 days. You want to release the pressure to ensure that everything is, smooth and minimal. The friction is minimal for everybody that is involved. So, but then if you are working with maybe small businesses, maybe you don't really need to go that far out, right? So basically, but like I said, this is based on an enterprise. So as you can see, you start to track. Now the metrics you'll be tracking for each stage will be different. For example, 120 days out, you need to start ensuring that, okay, our stakeholder value coverage. How many champions like this do we have? Like, what is the rate of our champion? How many champions do we have last week? Last 3 months ago? How many do we have now? Right. Also, are champions seeing value? Like the people that are going to help us to, that are going to ensure that this renewal process passes through. Are they seeing value? Right. You have to know these things. Then also peer performance alignment, for example. Like I said, if you have a cohort like you already track, let's say you can segment the users, the power users based on usage, like the top 20%, the middle 60%, the bottom 20%. Okay, you know that the top 20% of your users, they usually meet these certain metrics. That means if they meet these certain metrics, there is an assurance that they will renew. Right? So you start to see how you can create these patterns that you can follow to make things predictable for you. Then also once you already check all that out, once you already check them out, check them in 120 days, then you can move. Then when 90 days come, you start to track other metrics. It's like champion sentiment index. Like, what are the champions? Are they still on board? What are they saying internally? Like, how are they describing? Okay, that are they describing something like about net emotional value, right? How are they describing your products? Because like we all know, sales is emotional and it's justified with logic, right? Emotion is always tied to every sales. So you have to know, okay, what is the cost? How are they describing? Is it that when they describe my software, like, damn, man, this thing is really gives me a lot of pressure. I'm so glad I have this tool, like this tool exists. Or are they saying things like, I mean, it's okay, right? It works. You can understand. You can be get like, of course, this data you can be getting them from QBRs, random meetings. I don't know. However, your company is gathering data, that's exactly how you be getting this data, right? Of course. So you need to know that, okay, you have different metrics that you're tracking at different stage. For example, win research impact. Like I said, I'm bad with naming metrics. Like, but if I'm just trying to show you exactly how it works. Like win recency and impact. Basically, are they seeing any new big win that you can help can help to make your renewal case stronger? Then you know that, okay, 60 days out. Once they've checked out that 60 days out, I think you can use, for example, renewal process you can use is the MedPeak framework, right? You can use the MedPeak framework. Also, you can need to know, okay, how many of the renewal has been complete. Let's say there are certain paperwork that need to be completed. How many, as legal, like have you submitted the paperwork to legal in your own team, in your own organization internally? Has everything been like, how far has the progress been made? Start to that these are things you need to be tracking at each stage of the renewal process. So ensure that the guarantee of renewal is as high as possible. Then when you get to the 30 days out, the economic buyer, how are they engaging? Like, how many times have you met with the economic buyer? What's the engagement type, right? The net, the renewal cycle time can track. How long did it take for them to renew? Was he aligned with the benchmark? Let's say you have data that already tracked. So you start to see how these things tie in each other. Then, of course, the things that you learned, like, well, how can you make this thing better for the next stage? So now let's move to another stage. Now, expansion. Expansion is a stage on its own. It's actually under retention. Expansion is a process under renewal. I believe it's something that that needs its own motion as well, because expansion, is more about cross-selling and upselling, right? It's another way to contribute to the net revenue retention. So, for, like I said, for expansion now, start with the upselling approach. What is the community? What is the customer thinking? You're thinking, okay, I need to see that expansion solves more problem. Like, don't just tell me to expand because you are trying to boost up your revenue. So that's strategy be solving something for me, right? It used to be. Then also the tool should still be the best case for my outcome, right? Okay, if I'm going to expand, I need to ensure that this is still the best thing on the market. Like, it's not that there's something out there now you're telling me to expand, right? The ROI has to be clear to the decision makers, right? The people that are going to make decision, of course, they have to see the reason why they should be expanding. So you start to see, when you start from the way the customer thinks, you know that everything you're going to do will be based on that. So now that you know what the customer is thinking, okay, you need to know that the executives have to see how not expanding would keep them from meeting strategic goals. Then start with that okay, the customer, the executive, if they understand the cost of not expanding, then they will want to expand, right? So you can start to see how this helps you to address the objection and start to let you know what you need to check off for you to successfully meet a customer. That is also expansion proposal has to be presented and accepted, right? Although also they have to be meeting, there have to be new use cases identified, there have to be additional teams, maybe they have new employees, there have to be a reason for the expansion, like what they are thinking. Then you move to the ownership stage. First, I think, okay, um, who needs to own this stage for things to work, for things to go well. Also, then for the sharing with the customer, what do you need to share with customers for this stage to be successful, for value to be aligned, right? For everything to ensure that transparency and everything goes on well. Then you know that, okay, you need to see the quantified potential impact of expanding. Remember I said something about execs seeing the cost of not expanding. Then okay, you need to share with them the quantified potential impact of expanding. Okay, what is the ROI compared to what you're investing? What are we going to gain? How is it going to make us more competitive? Now, it is that executive care about. Then also, once you already have that, then you move to the measurement stage. You start to look at, okay, what is their future, the future breath rate versus the core. How well are they actually even using it to compared to the cohort? If you have a cohort, a benchmark already, measure it against, right? Also, the internal advocacy sentiments, like champions, are they willing to champion? Are they seeing value enough that they are willing to support your case? You start to see these things. Also, strategic event capture score. I'm sorry, I'm bad with me, but basically, you have to create a case for expansion. So you have to be scoring the case that, okay, is this case. There are some metrics that are actually your own personal metrics. They don't even have to be a business metric or a customer metric. They are your personal metrics. You have to score, you have to, okay, is this case strong enough? It's strong. If it's strong, I can give it an 8. If I see something stronger, then you know, once you start to give yourself score, then you start to be proactive. Then also, cities like the workflow saturation, how integrated is it into their software, into their systems? How is this plan going to make sense for them? You start to see these things, you start to measure them, right, with actual metrics, either through checklists, through Excel, through CRMs, whatever you use, right? Whatever is most convenient for you. And of course, it's all dependent on data. You need to be gathering the data, be refining as time goes on. And also, like I said, the last stage, which is optimization. You need to optimize, right? The things you learn, the things you could do better. You need to include them so that it can be better for the next customer. Then let's move to the last stage, which is advocacy. Now, this is the last stage. And still, even when they read that, they still need to be saying, they still need to be thinking about this. There are still things they'll be thinking about. It's like your product obviously has to have revolutionized my business by now. Like, if I'm going to be an advocate, it means your product has done a lot of good for me. So much that, okay, yes, I'm sorry to see this is something I can actually back. Also, things like I want to be seen as forward thinking. Not that I'm like doing you a favor. For that. So that the customer is thinking, okay, if I'm going to back your product, I'm going to talk about your product. It needs to be cool. Right? It used to be a cool product that, okay, everybody is saying that, okay, this is a new, a cool kid on the block and all like that. Not that I'm doing you feel well, just because you're providing me value, I owe you. Those are things that the customer is thinking about. So you know that your key man should have to be based on addressing those objections. Things like the high satisfaction rates, right? Oh, sorry. The renewal enter is also supposed to be there. Basically, high satisfaction. So after that when they are satisfied, You're going to be an advocate, right? Also, it's not a core part of their business. It's not a core, so you have to ensure that it is a core part of their business. ROI is so quantifiable by hand that you know that okay, there is no way this is our workflows. It has been included in your SOPs, right? It's because it's been a significant driver in your progress. So you have to ensure that yeah, these things you check them off, right? You have to ensure they check them off. If they don't check it off, you know that they might not become an advocate, right? You don't even have to be the one to push them or towards that part. Like a customer success is more than just a department. It's a company stuff, right? So you know that once your company has done so well, that is not a core part of their business, you know that you are ready to be an advocate. Your job as a CSM is to decide when a customer be an advocate. You are the one that will decide. You are not that okay, yes, this customer has our company has successfully done everything they need to do for this customer to ensure that they become an advocate. See how this trust will make you give you a sense of control over the whole process. Then also, who needs to own this stage for it to be successful? The champions, the how do I put that? Marketing team, right? That will provide all the marketing assets and everything. And also, what do you need to share with the customer, right? You can share things like studies, logo. If you're going to use your brand assets, and you need to approve it, through the necessary paperwork, timelines, the resources, the expectations. You can even give them an invitation to the customer advisory board seat. So that is basically what you share. Then also, you know that okay, based on the milestones, what do I need to be tracking? Things like how many, tiered advocate density, how many stakeholders are willing to advocate for you against the benchmark. Like I said, you need to have a benchmark. Also, if influence pipeline velocity, how many uh, referrals are you actually getting? For example, how many referrals are you actually getting from their advocacy? And also, how many of those referrals are converting? So I can know the quality of, can start to know that, okay, the customer that passed through all this stage is going to be bringing us this amount of customers at least every referral. You start to, even your own business, you start to create new marketing channels for the business apart from paid advertising or organic advertising. You know that, okay, due to the fact that customer success has done their work well, you can actually start to depend on referrals as another source of income for us. Start to see those things. It starts to make you as a customer service manager to be a core part of the business. Then also, as usual, the optimization stage. What can you do better? So basically, this is just, I know this is a long video, but this is an idea of how I created a customer journey map, right? That does all these things to ensure that customer success is enjoyable, repeatable. It actually ties to business outcomes, right? How it's the ROI is visible. So I hope you understand the whole framework.